Hi, guys. Welcome to the Infinity Night series. Tonight we have a very special guest, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. I'm really excited to hear what she has to say tonight. Take it away, Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Rowland. I refer to myself as a real estate matchmaker and a networking extraordinaire, but my journey really began as a teacher and has now morphed into something totally different. So, not your traditional trajectory, but happy to share my experience.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to have you on this and have you share with us. You mentioned something earlier, and I can't wait to get into it, but let's start out with, what do you do? Let's start there. Maybe just give us a basic rundown of where you are right now, because we're going to get into what you mentioned earlier, but where are you right now in your life?
So right now I do real estate as my main job. That is what pays my bills. I refer to myself as a real estate matchmaker because I think there is a lot of kind of negative connotation associated with people in the real estate industry. There's a lot of like the fancy TV shows that people see, a lot of like ego, just not very nice people that are really more into the like flashy, showy money. And I really am in it for the people and connecting my buyers to the right house, connecting my sellers to the right buyers, and connecting all of my clients to the right vendors and contractors and people that they may need to make their process smooth. And then I also lead a women's networking group called Eastside Entrepreneurs. And we meet monthly. That's been going for about 3.5 years. So that is my side hustle that really takes up like just as much time as my main hustle, but gives me a really awesome community of women surrounding me and supporting me at all times. So it's a really awesome world to be in.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you call it matchmaking because you're matching people with their homes, I can imagine. And I know when I went through the home buying process, there's a lot. And the
Mhm.
connections that you have and who you get matched with really, really make a big difference.
Yeah. And it's not
And then
just
the
finding
women,
the right house, right? Like you've been in that
right?
buyer
No.
position. It's like,
Hmm.
well, who's the right inspector for the location and the house that
Correct.
you're looking at? Who is the right person for the loan so that you get the best interest rate and the
Yes.
best deal on the house overall? And so there's a lot of like me vetting people over years and figuring out the best team for each of my clients. So I
Yeah.
truly do try to connect people. And if they're new to town, I might try to like introduce them to friends that live in their neighborhood and things. So I really try to make sure that people are having a good experience, like not just from when they sign the contract to when they close on a house, but really forever. Like you're not getting rid of me very easily, and I'm offended when my clients don't become my friends. So yeah.
Well, buying a house is a major life transition. I mean, you're going to be locked into that area and that
Mhm.
home for quite a bit of time.
Yep.
And so it's a big decision. And then the women's networking group, I love women's networking. I think it's
Yeah.
so needed, and we need these spaces where we can come and meet up with each other and learn from each other. So I love that you're doing that, and I love that you're doing both.
Yeah, I've actually had a lot of people over the years, well, not a lot, I would say a handful, but question why only women. And I always struggle to put into words how different of a feeling it is being in a space that is all women versus a space that's co-ed. It is so much more supportive and inclusive and a lot more of like lifting people up and not showing off or trying to be the best or trying to hand out business cards. It's truly about like a genuine connection. And that's what I was looking for when I started networking as I shifted careers from teaching. And I just couldn't find what I wanted. So I built it myself.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Now, we could say too that we build our lives. Maybe we have a plan, but we don't really know where we're going to end up. Could you
Yeah.
talk about maybe some of the twists and turns in your professional career? Briefly introduce us to like some different positions or organizations and how much time you've spent, compared to where you are today.
Yeah. So first of all, my undergrad degree is in geology, which is exactly what I'm doing now. Oh, wait. It actually surprisingly has come in kind of handy, which is really funny. Because whenever there's a big hillside by a house, I can tell if the hill is slumping or not towards the home. And so there are like weird little tricks that have come in really handy where I'm like, oh, you can't buy that. That tree is going to fall in the house later. Sorry. And they're like, oh, that's so good to know. Thank you. And then I did my master's in teaching, went into teaching mostly middle school science, and then I taught at a high school for the last 3 years of my teaching career. Um, But I, during that time, also got a master's in zoology for fun. Again, I do real estate now, but I have a degree in zoology because why not? But the reason for that really was it was 3 international classes over summers. So I got to go like hang out with cheetahs in Namibia and meet really awesome people doing that. And so I now have connections to people in the like education and conservation world all over. So I would say doing that experience, even if I didn't really need another master's degree, has led me to really good friendships that have lasted decades. And I have been all over the world and done really cool things that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So I think there's a lot of like good that can come out of stuff, even if you're not using it. Am I using my zoology degree ever? Not, no, not really. But I wouldn't trade it back for the world. I got so many cool things out of that. So, yeah, it's really about just finding the next step in your path. You don't necessarily need the end goal. I think we need to be flexible, right? Like if you think back to the businesses during COVID, like when things shut down, the people who pivoted are the ones that survived. Like great example is I have a friend that owns a bakery. You couldn't operate a bakery. You couldn't have people come into a shop for months. And both her and her husband work there. They own it together. So their whole family income was gone if they didn't figure out another plan. So they did like food deliveries. So they put together baking kits and then delivered them to different neighborhoods each day of the week. So I think there's just a lot to be said about being flexible if you run your own business. Like you have to be able to pivot with whatever your audience is looking for, not just what you want to do and what is going on in the world. So I think the more you're able to adapt to things, the better off your business is going to be.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. And that's something that you don't really, when you're in high school, you don't really know that that's possible.
For sure.
And you've had lots of different career paths already.
Yeah.
So why real estate?
Why
You've
real
had
estate
these,
is a great question. um,
yeah, you've had these really great career paths and, master's degrees, all of that. And why real estate? Like, what was it for you that was like, this is what I want to do? When did it
So
click,
I
that
wish that I
moment?
had a really elegant answer for you. Sadly, it was a selfish reason. I owned 2 condos and I was stuck at home during COVID. I lived by myself in one condo. I was renting out the other condo to tenants. And I was like, you know what? I have a friend who's a teacher, same as me. She got her real estate license recently, and that's going okay for her. So maybe while I'm sitting at home doing nothing, I should work on my license. It's not super long hours to do it. It's very minimal entry level effort to get in. And so I was like, I'm bored, I'll do it. And then I could buy and sell my own properties and save on the commission. Like I had no intention of going into real estate as my full-time job. But did my licensing. I got licensed in January of 2021, which is right when we're all like peak stuck at home. The market is also going wild and interest rates are at an all-time low. So I just posted on my personal Facebook page, like had done nothing to set up an actual business. I created like one single graphic on Canva and was like, hey, guess what, friends? Got my real estate license. And people started calling and I started getting business. Within like 2 months, I had closed on a house. And I had no idea that was going to happen. It was sort of just luck of the timing. And then shortly after I got started, I realized I was having way more fun with that than I was having teaching kids on Zoom. And magically, at the exact same time, the Issaquah School District sent me notice that I was vested for retirement. And so I responded with, great, I quit. So found out I was good to retire eventually and get the district's money. And I went ahead and put in my notice for the end of the school year, told my kids within a week or two of that. And like they all knew months before the end of the school year that I was not going to be back the following year. And then dove into it. So it was a little bit of a surprise turn. It happened pretty quickly. The plan was to have that be the back burner for a long time and just have it be like an extra cushion, but it became the full-time thing in only like 2 or 3 months of having my license. So, yeah, it
Wow.
was a little bit of a surprise, but it's worked out great. I'm way happier. People ask all the time if I miss teaching, and never once have I missed the classroom. And I want to point out to the high schoolers watching this, that is not because of my students. They are why I showed up every day. I would absolutely continue showing up for them every day, no matter what. And I still do. Like I meet up with my kids now that I had as 6th graders when they were 12 and they're now in their 20s. But I got sick of the parents and the coworkers and the administration and the federal regulations. It's a lot. And I think it is much harder to be a kid now than it used to be. And even in my 10 years of teaching, it got progressively harder and harder to support those teenagers in the ways that I felt they needed. I'm a very empathetic person, and it became really, really hard to show up emotionally in a way that was like helpful to them. My last year before I quit, so we're like in the first year of pandemic, I actually lost 3 of my former students to fatal fentanyl overdoses. So it was like no longer a happy place to be. I was scared of who was next. It was just a very, very dark time to be teaching in that world. So I, for my own mental health reasons, knew I needed to leave. And when the opportunity presented itself and the district said I was vested for retirement, I was like, great, I'm done. Like, not even a question. And I think
Yeah.
that ultimately was really good for me. Like, mentally and physically, I'm much more healthy now because I was holding so much stress every day showing up in a school system. So I
Yeah.
don't regret it. Definitely a shift, not expected, but it's been a good transition. And the same skill
Yeah.
set, weirdly enough. I do a lot of like breaking down complicated topics into manageable bite-sized pieces, saying it 12 different ways until everyone understands, and making sure that everybody's happy at the end. So it really is the same sort of process, just with adults who want to be there instead of kids that are forced to. So
Yeah. The interest is definitely there. Yeah.
yeah,
I want to have you touch on what being vested means, because I
yeah,
know what that means. I have teacher friends, and I think
yeah,
it's important to clarify that,
yeah.
what is being vested? And then, so touch on that really quickly. And then I want to transition into what do you mean a very minimal entry in the real estate
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
industry?
yeah.
So,
Okay. So vested means that you are given access to a retirement fund from your employer. So for a lot of like the tech positions, they become vested and get the company's money when they retire after like 2 years. For teachers, I had to teach for 10 full school years in order to get any sort of a retirement plan from the district. So I did not know that or understand it when I started. It was my first like salaried position. I didn't know how that whole process worked. I hadn't thought about retirement. And I went in thinking I was going to go teach for 2 or 3 years, get connections in the school district. And my plan had been to start a nonprofit to take students to other countries and do community service work and learn about the natural ecosystems. So I was trying to kind of connect my zoology and education backgrounds. But I didn't realize that I would be hurting future me if I did that because I wouldn't have access to a retirement fund. So I ended up staying a teacher for many years longer than I actually wanted to. I would say I was burned out by probably year 3 or 4, and I stayed for 10. And that was simply because I would get no money from the district in retirement if I didn't stay that long. So at the end, I really was that teacher that I said I would never be. I was there for the money, and that is not who I ever wanted to be. And so once I was given permission to step away and like be okay in retirement, I decided to do that. So yeah, so that's kind of the situation with the retirement system. Hmm.
yeah. And then when you talk about this minimal entry,
Yeah,
school teacher, okay, vested, you have to teach a certain amount to get your salary, your pay, your retirement.
yeah,
Real estate is not like that.
not even a
You
little
know,
bit.
this yeah, this transition of, okay, I'm doing this on my own. This is all up to me.
Yeah.
And, being able to sell your first home in a couple of months, is that normal? What's the typical
No,
timeline?
it is not normal.
Talk a little bit about that entry,
Yeah.
because you also mentioned, hey, getting your real estate license is pretty easy. You just take the test and voila,
Mhm.
then kind of the work begins, so
Yeah,
to speak.
and it's a running joke with realtors across the nation. This isn't specific to the Washington test, that it does nothing to teach you how to buy or sell a house. And I say that with utter seriousness. Not once does the education and training tell you how to do the job. Which is insane. That's the only industry I've ever heard of that doesn't train you in the required training. For getting your initial license, it's 90 hours of coursework that can be entirely done online, and it can be done by just like essentially reading a training manual, and it times you as you read. So you just have to make sure that you take the amount of time that you're supposed to read it. And then you take a test, and you go to a testing center. So that part feels more legit. You have to like go and sit in a little cubicle and take a test. And there is a state portion and a local or a national portion. And you know your score when you walk out of the testing room. You know if you pass both sections or none or one. And then if you don't pass one, you just have to go retake the one you didn't pass. The other one, the score stays. The whole training is just here's the different roles within real estate, and here's how they can get sued. That is like all they tell you. Not once do they mention how to use any of the programs that you'll need. They don't tell you how to buy or sell a house. They don't tell you how to talk to clients. Nothing about how to run a business. And so you essentially get your license and have zero idea how to do the job still. You've essentially learned a list of vocabulary and some things not to do, but they don't tell you what to do instead. So then you start taking extra courses like through your what's called a brokerage. So that's the company that you sign up under. I started with Coldwell Banker Bain. Big one around here is Windermere. You might have heard of Compass. There's a few big name companies. And I started with Coldwell Banker Bain, took classes through them. I signed up for a new agent training that was like a 12-week course with somebody down in Portland. And so I essentially then had to like pay for courses to teach me how to do the job that I was already licensed to do. And then kept like calling all the people I already knew in real estate. And one of them, who I still am under now at a different company, she was like, you just have to get clients. Like, that's the only way you're going to learn. And I was like, but how do you get clients when you don't know what you're doing? How do I answer their questions when I don't know anything? Luckily, though, I had bought condos for myself and I had done a lot of refinances of my loans. So at least I knew the buying process from the buyer perspective. So I was able to kind of use that knowledge to guide me. And I just marketed to buyers when I first started because I had no idea what to do to sell a house. I knew how to buy a house. So I targeted mostly first-time home buyers because they wouldn't know if I did things wrong because they've never had another experience. And that was honestly like the advice I was given from a family friend who's been in real estate for a long time. She was like, I totally started with all first-time home buyers because that was the least scary people to work with. And then I found out I actually love them because of my former teaching background. I love the education piece. And so the more I get to work with buyers, especially those first timers, the more excited I am because I now have the experience of teaching and the experience of all the previous transactions. So it's been a journey, but it's really like every single transaction is a learning experience. That's how you prepare for the next.
Yeah. Quick question. You said buyer, seller. Do people typically pick one and stick to one, or do they do both?
No, I would say the majority of people will do both. The money hungry people that I refer to as realtors that I do not think I want to associate with, and thus I call myself a real estate matchmaker. Those people like to work with the sellers. And there are some people that only work with sellers. They'll refer buyers out, partially because with a buyer, you don't know if they're ever going to find the house that they want. I've worked with people for 2 years and then they decide to not buy. So, and you don't get paid for any of that. Your hours are not paid until they close on something. So I've done years of work with people and never made a penny. And the people that want money don't like that. So they do listings specifically so they're more guaranteed to see a paycheck from the work.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, probably why some people pick a certain path in the field.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's lots of different paths within many different fields. Even within some of the backgrounds experience that you have, you could do a lot with it.
Yeah, so now I've been focusing more on what I advertise now and market to is the first time buyers and the first time sellers because it's really hard for people to buy when they already own. And so that upgrade from like your first house to your second house is just as much education involved as the first time buyers. So those are kind of like my people that I target.
Yeah. So when you join the firm, then, you're starting out, trying to get collect advice and kind of build your portfolio to go out there. And did you have to interview with this firm or do they just take on new people? Or let's talk a little bit about that.
It is different than every other industry that I have heard of. You do interview, but you're interviewing them. They're not interviewing you because they want anyone. They make money off of you making money. So they'll take anybody. You want to figure out which office is the right fit for you. And sometimes that's not even the right company for you. Sometimes it's seriously like who is in charge of the office. So like one John L. Scott office might feel like an icky fit, and then another one might be perfect for you. So it really is dependent on the leadership in that office and the people around you. I started in the middle of a pandemic, so I wasn't even allowed to go into offices. They were all shut. When I did interviews, it was all over Zoom, and I did not meet a single other person in the office, had no idea who worked with me. A lot of new agents now, or in any non-pandemic time, would go into the office and like do their work from there, just so they can overhear conversations with other experienced agents. It helps them just like absorb knowledge. I wasn't able to do that. It wasn't an option. So I did a lot of like webinars. Anytime I could find something that I hadn't learned yet, I would do it. I set up fake clients for myself and like pretended to do searches for specific types of houses so I could just practice. But it has been, yeah, it was a lot of like me figuring it out or calling people that I knew. Thankfully, like my uncle's a realtor. We have a family friend who's a realtor. I have other friends that are in it. I have another friend that started at the same time as me. So even now, 5 years in, I still text her to be like, hey, do you have a good landscaper for this area right now? Or like, hey, have you ever had this happen on a transaction before? So there's a lot of, trying to get support on your own, but you have to be proactive. Like if you're not proactive, you're not going to make it in real estate. I will say that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to know. So what are the hours like then? We're going to talk just really
Yeah.
quickly about like what are the hours, and then we're going to transition into networking.
Perfect.
But let's kind of talk about what
The
are the
hours.
requirements, hours, are you
Yeah.
in the office every single day? Are you out in the field?
That's such a good question. I often joke that like I left my 9 to 5 to work at 24/7. I am on the clock all the time. If you miss a phone call in real estate, you might miss a client, and that could be 20 grand that you missed out on. So, it is pretty imperative to have your phone on you at all times. I try to set some boundaries with that. Like if I am out for dinner with someone, I try to not have my phone face up. I have it set where if I put it face down, it is silenced. So I do try to be present with the people I'm with, but also all of my good friends know what I do. They know that sometimes I have deadlines that are on the days I'm with them. And so, I've been like in Bellingham doing putt-putt golf at a bar and have to like send a contract for my phone for signatures. And you're like, cool, in between shots, I'm just gonna not shots, like shots with the golf ball. Okay. I will go ahead and like send a form that is legally binding and really important. So I am getting better at kind of like not giving clients all of the options. I don't ask anymore like, hey, what day works for you? Unless I know that all of my days are flexible coming up, and then I'll let them choose. But I will be like, hey, does this time on this day work for you? And then if they say no, figure out another time and like keep the conversation going to figure out something that fits. But I've started like making suggestions that I know align best with my schedule and with traffic patterns, because I don't want to sit in my car more than I have to. I would say the in-person stuff is pretty infrequent, and with buyers especially, it's a surprise a lot of the time. So like listings will go live on Thursday, so a house will hit the market, give or take. That's not an exact pattern, but often it's Thursdays, and then clients will see stuff on Thursday and be like, hey, can we go look at it on Friday or Saturday or Sunday? And so I don't know until Thursday what my weekend is going to look like. I generally don't plan a lot with people on weekends because I don't know if I'm going to need to be working. If you do open houses, that's one way that a lot of newer agents get buyer clients, because it's people who are walking in trying to buy homes. So if they don't have an agent already, that's a way to like pick up clients. So secret fun fact, open houses are not to sell the house, it's to pick up buyers. It's totally like for the agent, it's not for the house, which is funny. Sometimes it sells a house, but not usually. Usually it's like you try to snag people that don't have a realtor. But yeah, I think there's a lot of like things that you can kind of schedule, but not always. Listings are a little bit easier to plan around because you know what day you're going on the market, so you can plan the cleaner and the stager and the painter and whatever needs to be done for like the week before that, and then that first weekend that you need to be doing open houses, and then you can kind of plan on being flexible from there. But yeah, you could get a phone call that throws off your whole next week, because a buyer could be like, hey, I want to go look at this house and I want to put in an offer, and now we have to do an inspection. So it is really hard to plan. I will say clients usually have day jobs, so they mostly need your help in the evenings and weekends because that's when they're free. So I do more of my like marketing prep and doing social media and sending email newsletters and things during the like work day or the typical work day. And then I do more of the client conversations evenings and weekends.
Yeah, that's good. So then how do you manage this with the networking group? Because those are set times. Do you
Yes.
have you ever had to step away and let's
I
transition into,
I have had to stand up in front of a room
yeah.
of like 30 women and be like, sorry, I need to get this sent right now. So, like, sorry, talk amongst yourselves for a second while I press some buttons and then I'll get back to you. But it's a room full of people who run their own businesses. And so, those are exactly the people that are going to get that. And having the 10 years of teaching experience, I have a lot of like time filler activities and I can come up with like talking questions really fast. So, I can generally keep people busy with like, hey, talk amongst your table group about this. And if you finish that question, go on to this one while I go do something else. So it's only happened a couple of times, but it definitely does. And then you're sort of like, well, sorry, I couldn't plan
Yeah.
for that has been the challenge though with like leading a group is like other people when they have client stuff come up on meeting night, they can just skip the
Mhm.
meeting. I don't have that luxury, and so I've tried to get better about like allowing myself grace to miss a meeting, once a year or something. Like, hey, I've got a cool vacation opportunity, or there's a concert that I want to go to that happens to be on the second Tuesday of the month. So I've started just asking people to cover for me. I've talked to some people about backup lessons and things just in case like I'm sick one day. Like I need somebody to be able to lead things. Luckily, there's really easy things like speed networking. We're just like every 5 minutes have people rotate and that can be a meeting. So we've kind of got backup lesson plans that we go to every once in a while where like somebody in the room has been there for it and could lead it. So that's been kind of the balancing act is asking for help when I need it and being honest when I'm at capacity and they all know it. Yep,
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like, the right group of people to go through this experience with. They get it.
for sure.
I have another question about that, but I think it's been interesting to kind of see how, maybe, and you brought this up earlier, maybe you're not actually working in that job field anymore. You've got these degrees. Now you're in this place that you didn't go to college for, yet, and
I'm
yet,
using it. I
these
mean, like, I'm using
skills,
pieces of all of it.
yes, the skills that you have learned, this is why I don't think that there are any wrong paths in life.
Yeah.
You can take a right turn, a left turn, go straight, go around a circle, and end up exactly where you're supposed to be because you're picking up skills along the way that are so important to where you're going to end up.
Yeah.
So what's really interesting is this networking topic. You're using a lot of these intersections of life within this group, and it's relatable. So
Yeah.
how do you get this started? How does one go about starting a networking
How
group?
does
Is it
one? How
have
does one?
a post and come join me and hey, let's see what happens? Or
Well, so I co-founded Eastside Entrepreneurs actually. I started it with my friend Liz Russell. She now runs a kind of community-based organization called On the East Side, and then she now runs a different networking community called We Biz Collective. And we had been talking for probably a year about starting something like this because we kept going to networking things that just felt icky. Like it was all I don't want to say all business. Like we all are business owners. We're all there to improve our businesses, to get clients. Like that's the whole point. But it just felt like so transactional where you walk in and it's exchange of business cards. I kid you not, like the amount of business cards I have here, like this is just my unsorted stock. Like this is not even like this is ridiculous. And that's just from going to events where, people walk up and are like, hey, nice to meet you. Here's my name. Here's my card. I don't know anything about you. I don't care what your card says. I need to know you as a person. I need to understand who I should refer to you. I need to understand why you're good at what you do. And I'm not going to just like, because I met you and you said two sentences to me, refer you clients. So we worked really hard to try and figure out how to create a community that felt more like a business family. So that was always the goal. So we did a lot of, well, I guess first, how did we get started? I had the teaching background. Liz had a lot of the like community events background. So we just reached out to female business owners that we knew and said, hey, we're going to do a little pilot meeting. Would you be interested in coming? And in exchange, we would love your feedback. And so we had probably like 8 people show up to our first one. We just met in my real estate office in the conference room, and we did a little practice lesson that I had planned ahead, and then asked for feedback. I think only like 1 or 2 people gave it, but it seemed like people all enjoyed it. And so we're like, well, maybe we just go for it then. We didn't have a name. We didn't have an email address. We didn't have a website. We had nothing. We had like a half vision and a need that we were trying to fill. So we started operating. We were meeting, I think, twice a month at that point. And over time, that has shifted a little bit. Like we've gone to different locations, different days, different times of day. We have run 2 groups at once. A lot of that was just through like social media and meeting people at other networking events and inviting them to come to what we were doing. And then ours now, well, Liz is now gone. It's now mine, which feels weird still, but love her dearly. It was just time to like do separate visions because we both were going to be better in that space as the like solo person. So like she's very introverted and I'm very not. And so she's got a lot of the like really quiet, reserved people who like mirror her personality in her groups now, and they meet in really small groups in quiet places to have like a cup of coffee and just maybe have like one talking point question to get them started. But she will check in every once in a while and be like, you would never believe what happened. We were sitting there and everybody was silent, like nobody spoke because she's got all these like introverts that come to her meetings. And then my meetings, like we scare people away because everybody's like hooting and hollering and like yelling across the room and like joking while I'm talking. And so it's funny to see like the groups sort of like branch out and really diversify based on who the leaders are. And yeah, I mean, it's just been fun to kind of like see it evolve, but I don't even think we had a name for the first few months. We didn't have an email address and a website until like a year and a half, 2 years in. And then I like rebranded everything, new logo, new website once Liz left and added a whole bunch of new features to the membership. So it's definitely been a work in progress, but I feel like we've gotten to a really good point. And we have a I'm gonna try not to cry while I explain these things because it's like heartbreaking, and beautiful in a like lovely way. But we have a group chat on Instagram, and people will just pop in there and be like, "Hey, can somebody read through my flyer that I created? Here's the target audience. Give me feedback." And like 12 people will send edits. Like it's insane. And somebody on I don't know like Wednesday was like, "Hey, I'm really struggling with my business. Like I am running to, I'm not getting a lot of traction in this online program that I'm trying to lead. I could just use help. Can anybody meet for coffee?" And like 4 or 5 people showed up on Friday night to go get coffee and help give her feedback on her business. And then they loved it so much. Somebody already today was like, here's the next one. And now we're going to all bring cheese and like have cheese and cracker night while we give feedback. And I want to do this monthly. Here's the first one. I reserved us a conference room. And like we've had people who are giving big keynote speeches at events and they want to practice in a group, and like 10 people will show up on a Sunday and like listen to their practice presentation and give feedback because they like truly want to help each other. And I'm like, oh my god, it's so magical. So
Love
it's been really
that.
great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really, really special. And it's gotta feel good to have set that ball in motion, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's no way you can predict anything. And
No.
then to see this really bring life to others is very special.
Yeah.
So it kind of brings me to my question that is a little bit more, business related too. At the end of the day, is it a business? Do you make money? Could someone say, I want to build a networking business and actually have a career path in it? Like we've talked
Yes,
about the
and
real estate career path, right? But is this a potential
yeah.
career path for someone?
I have tried to set it up so that it can be. When Liz left, we had the business license as a DBA, which stands for doing business as, under her other business license. So you can kind of have like branches of your business that operate under one single business license. And that's what we were doing. And it was all under her business. So when she left, I had to start a new LLC. I had to become my own business entity so that I could continue on. So we'd been operating for like 2.5 years at that point, and I was all of a sudden starting everything on the back end from scratch. So it was weird to be running a already operating business, but like I couldn't take anyone's money because I didn't have a business bank account yet, and I couldn't do the things that we normally would be doing. So I think yes, there is a way to make some money. Are you going to make a living on it? Not unless you're running many groups in very different places for very different audiences. So like there are a lot of women's networking groups around. There are some that charge $400 for their big annual event and make $0 for the year. They're in the negatives every year. There are some where they're at like 60 members now and are maybe starting to make money, have launched a second group in a different city, and not just like Kirkland and Redmond, that's too close. But like one is doing Tacoma and Mercer Island. That's a big enough difference where you're going to attract different businesses. But when I started my new business license, I didn't actually title it Eastside Entrepreneurs as the business. The LLC is actually just Entrepreneurs LLC. And then I'm doing a DBA of Eastside Entrepreneurs. So that gave me the option of like, I can franchise it if I want to, or I can create other groups. And franchising would be where like you sell groups to other people and they run them. And then you like manage all of the managers of the groups basically. But I also can start more groups in other places. Like I have a lot of connections in Bellingham. That's far enough away where it's not the same audience. So I'm like, well, be hers and e hers, you know, like, so there's always options. But I also am working hard to like not deduct expenses on my taxes right now for the business because I'd rather pay more tax to the IRS, even though I don't love that, but be able to sell the business later. If you deduct all your expenses, it looks like you make no income, and then it's harder to sell a business. Am I planning to sell it anytime soon? No. But anytime you start a business, you should do so with the plan of being able to sell it later, because you don't want it to just fizzle out and die and be worth nothing when you're done with it. So that's a big one, especially with naming a business. Do not have your name be the business name. Don't have your team be the team's name. Right now, I'm operating as Rachel Rowland Real Estate. That's useless to anyone other than me, Rachel Rowland. So I'm in the process right now of launching a team called Rain City Roots, and then that will apply to anybody in kind of like the Seattle area. So I'm going to be shifting over to that as soon as my website is done. It's in the works right now. I need to decide on the logos. They're all good, so I got to figure that out. But I'm really trying to think bigger picture and like longer range of how do you operate businesses that can still make you money even when you leave.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because that was something that I also wanted to ask
Mm-hmm.
in regards to this, because when you do start a business, there's always going to be a season in life that maybe, you've done this for 10 or 20 years. What happens after that?
Mm-hmm. What if you want to
Selling a
retire?
business can still, bring you money at the end of the day, which is, I mean, kind of the goal is if you want to make money, right? So
Yeah.
it's really, really good to hear these things, especially for someone who is thinking about starting a business.
Yeah.
Having these general names that someone could pick up and go, and not just the personal name.
Yeah.
You are going to be your person in the business, but not necessarily that name. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Anything, kind of my last like culmination to the business side of things, right? The career path business side of things. If someone wanted to start a business or even get into real estate, because essentially that is a business.
Yeah,
let's be
absolutely.
honest.
Yeah.
Business transaction. What would be the one thing that, and the reason why I'm asking for one thing is because I'm sure we could think of a lot, but one thing that you wish you would have known. Oftentimes we can look back and say, man, I wish I would have known that. And this is where mentorship is so important, because mentorship says, hey, here's the things I've learned along the way, which is exactly why we do these interviews. So what's one thing that you wish you would have known?
I think the biggest thing that I've realized now, and I kind of was doing it at least a little bit, was the networking piece. Because I have so much knowledge about running a business in my brain where like I have friends who want to start a business and they'll reach out with like a random question to see if I know. And they're like, I know it's not real estate, but like, do you know how to do this? Or do you know somebody that does this? And I always have an answer. And I am shocked at the information that comes out of my mouth. Like I have no idea how it got in my brain, but it's because I've been sitting in these rooms surrounded by people that are doing it. And so I've been absorbing information that whole time without even realizing it. And I can't iterate enough. Like you need to be learning and growing constantly because the world is always shifting, especially if you think about AI right now. Like if you're not utilizing that in some way in your business, you're behind. And I hate AI. I don't want to use it, but like you have to in some capacities. And with running a business, I think the biggest thing that I didn't understand is that I had to wear every single hat. I didn't know that I was going to have to become an expert on business taxes or that I was going to have to know marketing for planning events. I didn't realize that like it would get harder and harder to get people in the door. Like more and more people know that eHers exists, and I still can't get people to show up to the events that they know and love. So it's been I just think there's a lot that you have to do right up front. You can't be an expert at all of it. The moment you can hand something off to other people, do it. Pay someone, because that's going to free up your time and energy to do the work that will bring in the money. That's easier said than done, because when you start, you're not bringing in a lot of income. So there's not really income to share with other people. But I would say like having a savings of like significant amounts before you launch a business, or having another job while you're getting started, is really vital, because the income is like very unpredictable for the first few years. It wasn't until year 5 that I made enough to survive as a realtor. So most people don't make it past year 3. I finally, like, goal has always been to just make as much as I made as a teacher. That was always the hope. If I could match my teaching salary, great, because I know I can live on that. So didn't do that till year 5.
Yeah. Oh, that's really valuable information. It kind of reminds me of maybe the difference of middle school and high school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you were a teacher.
Yeah.
So,
And I did both.
in
Yeah.
in your opinion, what is that difference to you between middle school and high school? We know as adults the transition that happens between high school and adulthood,
Mm-hmm.
which is why we have this organization, Shozu and I, and we want to help people transition through this mentorship to
Mm-hmm.
really become the people that they want to become in adulthood. And that takes stories, it takes learning, it takes pivoting, it
It takes
takes,
a lot of mistakes.
reinventing yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just exactly what you've been talking about. It's
Yeah.
so important to always learn. So, what's the difference between middle school and high school as a teacher?
Oh gosh. This is gonna sound so mean, but if you know my personality, it's actually out of love. I had a lot of the same students as high schoolers, because I taught in the same district. So I had kids ask me, like, what's the difference? And I was like, honestly, you're just stupider now. And they all looked at me like kind of offended. And they're like,
Yeah.
actually, that checks out. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Because like they're academically smarter. Absolutely. You've got book smarts. You can do things. You can like use tape now. Really proud. I don't know. 6th graders go like this to rip off a piece of tape, and somehow it's like 12 feet long. I don't know how they do it. Magic. Finger dexterity doesn't exist in 6th grade. But by high school, they have cars. They're doing drugs. They're drinking. They are just like riskier behaviors overall. I'll like have students climb on roofs, of tall buildings. Like there's just stuff where their prefrontal cortex is no longer in the building, and they are like making bigger decisions. And so that's where I was like, hey, sorry, you're just like dumber now, but in a like smart way. I don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's the big thing. And then in high school, your grades start to matter. So people have to take school more seriously, even if they didn't in middle school. I did have a lot of students come back and be like, ooh, I wish I had tried harder in middle school, because then I would have had the skills and the habits down that I needed in high school. I didn't take it seriously because I knew I didn't have to. And then by the time high school hit, I was a little bit behind. So that's a big one, is just like take the 3 years you got to practice. And then by the time you hit high school, you've got it down.
Yeah. I've had two different high school stories in my own household because I have two adult children.
Mm-hmm.
And one, was not that great of a student, but, mid-grade student, graduated, walked, and it was really great to see. But then my next son, who's super smart, just decided, I don't really want to do school,
Yep.
and nobody's going to force me to do it. And
The
just
smart ones
kind
are the
of,
ones that stop trying for sure. Yeah.
he was on the honor roll,
Yep.
and it's like, I'm just going to stop trying. And it wasn't until the very end, the last semester, because he didn't end up graduating, he got into that, whatever it's called afterwards, where you're still
Mm-hmm.
able to get your diploma, but you just didn't walk with your class. The last quarter, he got all straight A's.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yep. Because
great.
it finally clicks that like, oh, there is a consequence, but it's like 4 years down the line.
Yeah. And
So yeah.
he said the same thing. I wish I just would have tried harder and been done,
Mm-hmm.
because it took him an extra year. And it's
Yeah.
like, just get it done.
Yeah.
Get it out of the way and move forward with life, because there's more life to live. But you
Oh,
really do
absolutely.
need to graduate and have that diploma. There's a lot of spaces in the world that won't even talk to you if you don't have those things.
Yeah. And
Not that
sadly,
you
like,
can't make a life, but if you want a certain space in life, those things are needed. And I think that that's a really important piece to becoming an adult,
yeah.
recognizing the things that you need to make your life valuable to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
For you, you figured out, I don't want to be in this teaching space anymore.
Yeah.
I want to move into a space where I'm more free to do what I want to do, to
I'm
help
busy all the
people.
time, but I get to
Huh?
do, I'm busy all the time still, but I get to do it in the way that I want, which is a huge
Correct.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get to create this networking space,
Hmm.
which is so beautiful, bringing people together.
Yeah.
So,
And that's all honestly like started leading to clients too.
mhm,
So I have one of our members closing on a house on Tuesday. And last year I had two members buy and sell. So that was four closings from like members over time. And I also have a little bit of crossover right now from education too. One of my sets of clients where I'm showing a house in North Bend tomorrow, it's a former student's parents. So there is definitely this crossover of worlds. And I think that all of those connections that you have from everything come in handy later on.
yeah, totally. So why teaching? When you first started out, what drew you to teaching?
Well, first, I wanted to be a dolphin. Figured out that wasn't possible. Went for a mermaid. Also found out they weren't real. And then I was like, okay, well now I want to just like help people or animals. So I wanted to do like a nurse, a teacher, a vet. Realized if you're a nurse or a vet, you have to deal with bloody things and that you like, but they're like in distress. And I was like, that doesn't sound great. So teacher was what was left. The like caregiving role that didn't involve icky stuff, wasn't fictional and impossible. But ultimately wanted to like find connection with teenagers and families so I could start that nonprofit and take kids on trips. But that was like naive thinking. I didn't know that I had to teach for 10 years. I also didn't realize like how much money it costs to run a business and how much I would have to overcharge people to make a living doing that. So the more I got into teaching, the more I realized that that like really wasn't feasible without a lot of hardship and just a lot of money trouble for the rest of my life. And so that stopped feeling great. And yeah, teaching was the temporary plan that turned into a longer term plan. My first year was actually in Madrid, Spain. And I was supposed to be there for 2 years, but came back after one because I realized that that was not the place for me. And then the reason I ended up in the Issaquah School District is because it was August and I had a plane ticket back to Spain and I didn't want to use it. So I needed any job because I have a very strong work ethic. I was not going to be able to tell Spain that I just wasn't coming back because I didn't want to. In my brain, that was like not an option. So I needed another job so that I could tell Spain I couldn't come back. And the Issaquah School District was hiring for a point 0.4 full-time equivalent. So I was teaching two classes instead of the usual five, and they were in different classrooms with different smartboard technologies. My desk was in a closet. And I was like, yeah, I'll take it, sure. And school started like the next week. So the district was desperate to hire someone. I was desperate to take any job anyone would give me. And I was like, sure, yeah, two classes, a closet, that sounds great. So that's how I got started with the Issaquah School District. And then eventually worked up to a full-time position. And then shifted to the project-based high school. So then I could kind of teach more what I wanted to teach or what the kids wanted to learn. My kids really were like a school family, so I've always been really big on community and relationships, and that's where like it was hard to leave once I was transitioning out of teaching because I was supposed to have those kids for their 4 years of high school. So I had a mixed grade level group. It was like 5 kids of each grade level ish. And so my juniors that year, they had me for their 3 years of high school. And for me to not come back for their senior year was like absolutely devastating. I was their extra parent. Like I'm their big sister. I am their teacher. And so I had my juniors hop on a call without the rest of them. And we had a good cry together. And then we like went on our way. Yeah. So it was
Yeah.
very hard to leave. Love them dearly, but I still see them like as adults. It's cool to watch everybody grow up. So that's been a really cool
Yeah.
experience as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, this brings me to my final question tonight. You've shared a lot, and we're sure appreciative of everything you've shared. What's something that you would hope and want your younger self to know? If you were to look back at your younger self,
Yeah.
what would you want your younger self to know?
Um, I think I don't know, if I was advising my younger me, I think I would say that it's okay to leave when it doesn't feel right. It's okay to fall back on like my parents, right? Like if I had just left teaching when it started feeling miserable, and like moved back into my childhood bedroom as an adult, would that have changed anything? Would I have found something different? I don't know. But I know that I stayed through a lot of really bad situations in education that I could have avoided had I left when I really wanted to. But I also wouldn't have met a lot of the awesome people that I met. So there's good in every situation, right? I don't know that I would be in a better place now had I left teaching earlier, but there were a lot of like bad things that happened in the last few years that I really would have loved to avoid. Especially like the last few years at the middle school I was at was not great. So yeah, I think just giving yourself the freedom to jump into the scary unknown and like leave a situation when it doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's important to remember those things. That's why we love asking this question, is
Mm-hmm.
because we've all been through something,
Yeah,
and stories are so important. What would we want our younger self to know? Because ultimately we can reflect back, any one of us, and take that and put it into practice in our everyday life.
absolutely. Even now, like I'm in a position now where with real estate, I can cut a client. If I don't like them, if they're making my days bad, if me talking to them stresses me out, then I don't have to
Mhm.
do it. I have let clients go. And that has been very freeing to be able to do that. And even when money is tight, we call them energy vampires. Like you don't want those people. They're just sucking your energy out of you and making your days hard because that's taking away the energy that could be put into a different client that would make your day plentiful and beautiful and still make you money in the end. So, really, as a business owner, the hardest thing is starting to like put your foot down on who you're going to work with and who you're not. With real estate, there's a lot of rules around like fair housing laws. So even with building out a team, I want an all women's team. I'm like purely done working with men, like ever. And I work with like couples when they're like as clients when they're on even footing. If the man is in charge, they're probably not my people. And so if they are equal partners in life and they equal make decisions and they both are bringing in income and they're both in charge of like finding the home, that's great. But I'm not allowed to market and say that I only want women on my team. So I've made, I will have all photos of women on my social media and on my website. I'm going to put only pictures of women in the marketing. I am going to have brand colors that are pretty feminine. And that is purely so I can kind of target a specific audience without outwardly saying that I'm targeting a specific audience when trying to build out a team. So yeah, I think that's been the nice thing is like I can do that. I can adjust to what I want my life and my business to look like. Whereas teaching is it's very regimented. I mean, you're told here's your curriculum, here's what you're doing on day one. You can adjust it slightly to fit your personality, but you're told here's what you're teaching. This has been voted on by the whole community. It is assigned to you. You are doing these lessons, you're skipping these ones. Here's the test you have to give, and here's the state test you're training them for. So it's very like rigid in what you can do, which actually, shockingly enough, was really good for my ADHD. Didn't know I have it. So when I left teaching and no longer had the structure, I had a period of time after the market slowed down where I was like, I am non functional. I can't do anything. I cannot make myself sit and work. I cannot keep track of anything. My brain is just gone. It has fallen out my ears. Got the ADHD diagnosis, and I was like, that explains a lot. Oh. And so now it's still like I'm like years into that diagnosis, trying to figure out the right medications and the right systems. And at first I was mad. Like, how easy would life have been had I known that I had that all along? And I was angry that I didn't know until I was in my late 30s. So that has been an interesting adjustment in this career shift too, was like figuring out more about my own brain and my own learning style. And so for students, like, you're just at the tip of the iceberg, my dears. There's still always so much more learning about not only the world, but like even about yourself.
It's very true. Yeah. And what a great way to end our night on that high note. I absolutely love it because it's true.
It is.
So, Rachel,
Yeah. Yeah.
we have loved having you on our talk show slash
Right.
podcast, YouTube channel, Infinity series. Like, we just want to share stories so that more students or people too. I mean, even if you're in a young adult transition, you don't have to specifically be in high school, but you just want to figure your life out. This is for you. We want you to hear these stories and be inspired. And I hope that I asked great questions, but it's not too late. You can drop a question in the comment section. Send us an email if you want something specifically answered by Rachel. She spoke about something today, and we will get that information and we will share that with you. So please reach out. This is not the end of the story nor the relationship. So let's learn together. Let's keep doing life together. Rachel, thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was a great time.